Hey guys, Mike with KC Tarantulas here, and it's the day after Christmas. And as you can see, I didn't feel like putting on real people clothes. With the holidays over and my crazy schedule kind of calming down, I thought I would pop back in and do one last video before the end of the year. And I thought it would be a good idea for me to kind of just go over my entire collection as it stands. Bring each enclosure down, put them on the table, and show you guys the tarantula, talk a little bit about it, and show you the progress of my collection over the past year. I probably will do one of these maybe every year. That might be a good goal, but this might run a little bit long. If it does, I will split it into two parts. I also wanted to show you guys how I keep track of all my tarantulas. I know some people use an app on their phone, but I use a spreadsheet with all the pertinent information that I believe I should have to track feedings, molts, things like that. So I will show you guys that as well, and I will be sharing out a blank version of it so that you can use it as well if you like. But yeah, I'll try to keep this introduction short. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Alright, to start us off here, I'm going to go from my smaller tarantulas up to my larger ones. But we'll start off here with the Brachypelma vagans, also known as the Mexican red rump. I have named this one Tamale. Let me see if I can get you guys a look at Tamale. It's a little bit skittish, quick to run, but we'll see if we can get you a quick look here. So, not very big, just a small guy. But we'll hopefully get bigger. Doesn't grow very fast at all. I've had this one for a little bit now, and yeah, not much has changed with this one. But yeah, let's go to the next one. Alright, this is one of two Salmopoeus Armenia slings that I have. Probably won't be able to see it. It's got a burrow down over here. But yeah, these two that I have are from a breeding I did with my mature male that I had towards the beginning of my channel named Soul. So these two are doing well, growing quite fast. One thing with Salmopoeus armenia that I've noticed and I've been doing is as slings, you don't have to put them quite in an arboreal setup. They will burrow like a terrestrial when they are really little. Yeah, this one's barely ever out and is almost always underground, so you can usually get away with that for a while. And then usually once they get about the size of an inch, inch and a half, then you want to transport them into something a little bit more on the arboreal side, but still with Salmopoeus you want to leave plenty of substrate because they will kind of almost always be low to the ground. Even my biggest Salmopoeus has plenty of climbing room, but almost never utilizes it. She's almost always on the ground. She doesn't burrow, but she does like to stay towards the base of the cork bark and around the ground. But yeah, Salmopoeus armenia. These ones are unnamed. I'll wait till they get a little bit older to give them names. Let's move on. Alright, up next we have Ifrit. Ifrit is my... I'm sorry, not Ifrit, this is Aries. Aries is my Homeoma species Fire, the Chilean Flame. I believe these guys had a rename. I haven't updated my list yet, and I don't have that off the top of my head. But yeah, these are a dwarf species. They don't get very big. Very slow grower. You can see Aries there in the water dish, which I filled up earlier. So probably getting a drink or is trying to hide since I moved the enclosure. Yeah, this one is growing so slowly. And there was at one time that this one had burrowed into a previous enclosure and covered itself, and I had thought that it was buried and might not be living anymore in the enclosure. I waited for quite a while to see any kind of resurgence of Aries, and it wasn't until I went to do a rehouse that I finally got to see Aries again. This time has just kind of buried a little burrow underneath the cork bark there in the corner. It comes out ever so often. But yeah, can't wait to see this one get a little bit bigger, so you can get that distinct red band on the base of the abdomen. You can kind of see it a little bit right now. I can't get you a closer shot. Oh, there we go. Look at that. So you can kind of see it there where the abdomen meets the carapace. But it's not very distinct yet. So once Aries starts getting the darker colors on the legs and abdomen, then that orangish red band definitely shows up a lot more clear. But yeah, that was Aries, and we will move on. Alright, up next, this is the enclosure for my Ceratogyrus marshalli, which is also known as the straight-horned baboon. This one's name is Morari, and not much to see. This one doesn't come out very often. Just barely visible in the corner here, a couple legs. But like I said, I'm showing you guys everything, even if they're not out, so you can see the enclosures. So yes, this is just a small, like Hot Wheels display case. Really good for setting them up vertically for arboreals, but also horizontally like this for terrestrials and fossorials. Got a little water dish in the corner, and that's pretty much it. I didn't really, for when they're this small, I just basically put them on substrate and give them a water dish. And they usually will burrow and make some sort of hole. Morari has 2 entrances here to get in and out. This one definitely has a little bit of attitude. Even as a very small sling, Morari's only like this big. Gives me threat poses all the time. When it is out, it's threat posing, and then if not, it's not visible. So I was hoping that it would come out here so you could see that attitude, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So let's go ahead and move on. Alright, up next in a very similar enclosure, pretty much exactly the same. This one has my Idiothele mira in it, named Ruhanga. And let me see, kind of turn this a bit. Yeah, it's not going to focus. Kind of see Ruhanga there down in the corner. It's made quite the series of tunnels and such. Also, was nice enough to web and put substrate over the water dish. So I've just been putting water in this hole in the corner, which goes right down to the bottom where Ruhanga has the burrow. And so I do that every once in a while to make sure that it's still getting enough moisture. This is my second Idiothele mira. Some of you may remember that I used to have one named Rafiki that didn't get very big and had a bad molt / some kind of illness that we couldn't figure out. But hopefully this one lives much longer, because I think they are a gorgeous species. I do love my baboon species, and so I would definitely like to get this one to a larger size. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Alright, up next is, as you see, the blue dot there. This is my Carabiner versicolor sling named Voxel. As you know, I had Pixel, whom I definitely loved and was my first spider. So I'm probably always going to have one of these, and I thought that I would name it something very similar. So this one is Voxel. Try to turn this. I don't want to spill the water dish too much. You can kind of see it up there. Always to the top. Definitely with your versicolors and your avic species, they almost always web the very, very tops of their enclosures. So you definitely don't want anything that opens from the top. It would be not very convenient for feeding and whatnot. But yeah, that is Voxel, and we will move on. Alright, this is my Avicularia variegata, named Vegeta. This one, if we can get a look here, is right here. Sorry, I know that this is not the most clear. Let me try to move some lighting around, might help. With lighting, try not to get too much of a shadow. There you go. This might make it a little bit better. A little bit, not much. Very tiny little thing. But again, same setup as the Caribbean versicolor, and the next species will also be the same. But this one, so far, typical Avic, is good eater, good webber. Is always on top. Didn't web up like a funnel yet on top, but is always at the top of the thing usually for us to see, which is nice. So another front opening enclosure, and let's move on. Alright, like I said, this is the exact same setup but yet again. I'll tilt this so hopefully you guys can see it a little bit. Not really. But right here is an Avicularia species Peru purple, which I have named Nebula. A little bit bigger, has a black carapace. If I can try to get this to focus a little bit better. Yeah, you can see a little bit. Yeah, kind of just looks like your typical Avic right now, with a little bit darker carapace than some of them. But hopefully, when this one gets bigger, it will be much more fun to look at. But yeah, I'm gonna keep this one short because same as the last ones. Let's move. All right, this is Ifrit. Ifrit is my Brachypelma auratum, also known as the Mexican flame knee. As you can see, pretty standard sling setup. I gotta watch it. Make sure it doesn't go running out here. By the way, any mealworms you see in any of these enclosures, I put in today, so don't get worried about them being in there for a long period of time. So yeah, pretty standard stuff. Dry sub, water dish. Like I said, I don't add any kind of cork bark or anything when they're this small. As they get older, they'll get more decoration. But I'm excited to see this one get older. I think they're very, very striking when they get a little bit bigger and they have the dark colors with the orange instead of some of the other Brachypelmas. They definitely have a little bit different of a color scheme. So I'm excited to see that. Also another incredibly slow grower. So probably will be in this enclosure for another two molts or so. Then will be something bigger, but that will probably take months and months. But yeah, that was Ifrit. Let's move on. Alright, this is Ines. Ines is my Ephebopus marinus, also known as the skeleton leg. And this is a rare occurrence. Ines is actually out and on top. This one is almost always in its burrow. I don't know if you can see through the top of the enclosure very well because of the webbing. I apologize, but this is one that I definitely don't want to open the enclosure because Ines will either run down into the burrow or probably out of the enclosure because this species is very, very flighty. But if you can see, which I hope you can, Ines is starting to get the markings on the legs that gives it that skeleton leg namesake. That just happened with this most recent molt, so that's always exciting. I always like it when tarantulas start to get their distinct features as they get older, because most slings all kind of look the same. So once they start just being a little bit more distinguishing from each other, it's always nice. But yeah, I keep this one with deep substrate and a water dish. I do overflow this water dish just because this species does like it a little bit more moist, so I do that maybe once every 2 weeks or so. I will overflow the water dish instead of just filling it. But other than that, yeah, pretty straightforward tarantula. But let's move on. Alright, this is another very similar setup. Dry sub that's deep with a water dish. There's a little bit of cork bark in this one. But this is the enclosure for my Bumba cabocla, which I've named Spell. I'll try to turn this without spilling that water dish too much. If you look at the bottom, if I can get a good... Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see Spell down there. Spell, probably in the next molt, will be getting a larger enclosure, moved up to one of the baseball size enclosures that you guys will be seeing in the next couple species, I believe. But yeah, really simple, straightforward species. A little bit underrated in my opinion. I think they have a very cool, unique look with that red carapace that they get. I believe they're called the Brazilian redhead because of that. But yeah, that is Spell, and we will move on. Okay, this is the enclosure for my Lasiodora striatopes, which I have named Leona, and has already knocked over the water dish that I filled up earlier, so that's always nice. Again, you know, terrestrial species, setup's going to be very similar. Just put dry substrate, water dish, and then if they're a little bit bigger, I'll give them a cork bark so that they can burrow under it if they like. But yeah, pretty straightforward. So this should be a pretty cool species. Once it gets bigger, they're very similar to other Lasiodora, but they just look a little bit more bulky and thick. You know, look real big and strong for Lasiodora. So yeah, I'm excited to see this one get a little bit bigger. I keep saying that because it's true. I'm excited for all of them to get bigger because it's definitely one of the best parts of keeping. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Alright, there on the right hand side of your screen is my Dolichocelli I always mess it up. Diamantinesis, I can't say it. I'm sorry guys. Anyways, I've named this one DD in reference to its Latin name, and that's just much easier to say. It is quite a mouthful. Yep, this one I recently picked up, if you guys remember from I think past video. This one has molted once in my care and has already started to get its colors. This is also another dwarf species, but they are very beautiful. Definitely have like a metallic kind of sheen and different colors. Not unlike the GBB, but so far in keeping this one, my experience with it is that it's incredibly skittish. I'm really surprised it managed to stay still for me to put it in frame. But with this one, this is a new enclosure for it, brand new actually. I just put it in this yesterday. But with this one, again, dry deep sub, cork bark in there for anchor point, for webbing, which as you see it's already used, and then a water dish. So in the future I'll probably be overflowing the water dish every once in a while for this species, and they do like it a little bit more on the moist side than some of the other ones, so I'll be doing that, and you can look forward to seeing more of DD in the future. This is my Grammostola inheringi, which I have named, as you guys can hear me pause to look at my list because I don't have this one labeled yet. No, this is Antonio. And there's reasons behind all these names, guys. If you have any questions about any of them, comment down below and I'll explain them for you. But I will explain Antonio here. Antonio is a reference to an MMA fighter, which several of my species are. But this one is, this species is from Brazil and it gets to be extremely large. So I thought that I would name it after Antonio Bigfoot Silva, which is a Brazilian MMA fighter. One of the ones I had earlier as well, the striatopes, was named Leona, which is Portuguese for lioness, which is a reference to Amanda Nunes, a female MMA fighter, so also from Brazil. So yeah, that's where these names come from. I think I might be able to get away with opening this enclosure and giving you guys a little bit better look at Antonio, hopefully. don't have nails. Get under this little lip. Okay, let me see if I can open this up and give you guys a little bit clearer view. A little bit, not a whole lot. But yeah, this one is the sibling to tarantula cats. So they are from the same egg sac. So excited to see each of them get larger. And they will, because they are a very, very big species. But yeah, let's move on. Alright, here's a fan favorite. This is my Armenian poultropes. The golden blue-legged baboon, I believe is the common name. This particular tarantula's name is Zeph. As you can see, it's still munching on the food that it got earlier. I mean, what can you say? Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous tarantula. Again, another baboon species, which I really do love. Yeah, this one molted fairly recently, so those colors are definitely vibrant. I have not been able to sex the molt. I don't believe. I'll have to check my notes. I have it listed as unsexed, so maybe I haven't. But as you can see, dry sub, anchor point for some webbing, or for them to burrow under. This one decided not to burrow, but just the web. And a water dish. Pretty straightforward. This one's been growing fast and is not very defensive, not very skittish. It does, if I open the lid and the lid kind of pops suddenly, it will kind of react to that. But other than that, I haven't had any kind of severe, it hasn't done laps around the enclosure or given me any threat poses. And if you guys watched, I rehoused this one recently, like a month ago, and it was a really easy rehouse. So far, really great species. I'm absolutely in love with it. And can't wait to again see it get bigger and more beautiful. But let's go ahead and as we get a little happy dance there. Well, how can I move on when you're doing a happy dance? It's a good one too. Alright, let's move on. Alright, here we have my Hapalopus species Columbia large, also known as the pumpkin patch large. This one's name is Baza. As you can see, there's also a molt in there. Baza just got his or her first meal after a molt, so molted about a week ago. Has been happy with that. This is an enclosure that I left pretty bare, just because when this one was a little bit smaller, I gave it cork bark and everything, which it completely ignored, and just kind of webbed up everything and made itself like a little web corner. And so yeah, this one just kind of seems to just like having a wide open space and lots of place to web. And it has, as you can see, webbed over everything. A little bit skittish. This one will run laps. So I'm not going to open the top, unfortunately, guys. I'm sorry. But luckily we can see through it, and you can see why everybody loves these, because they do have just some incredibly striking, beautiful colors. Especially with this one being so recently after a molt. That's when they definitely look their best. But yeah, dry sub. Plenty of space to web. You can put some anchor points in there, or some cork bark. If you'd like, your specimen might like that a little bit more than this one, but this one just wants wide open space with dry sub and a water dish. So yeah, pretty nice little tarantula for people that are starting off and maybe don't want to get something that gets incredibly large, because this is a dwarf species. I highly recommend them. They're voracious eaters. Just a little bit on the skittish side, so that is something to consider. Alright, I'll make this one quick since it's just a bunch of dirt, and we probably won't get a look at this one. But this is my Hysterocrates, or Hysterocrates, however you say that, gigas, H. gigas, named Scuba Steve. Eventually, I am going to kind of try and see if the myth about this species liking water and going into water holds any truth. Yeah, so I kind of named this one in anticipation of that. But yeah, with this species, I have an incredibly deep substrated enclosure with a water dish that I overflow to make sure that that stays on the moist side. This species does like to put their burrows on the sides of riverbanks and things like that, so they like deep moist sub. So that is what I have done here. Very, very beautiful tarantula if you ever get to see it. I really like this species. Has very thick, like hairy back legs that are much more different than the rest of its legs. So I think that that's a very interesting, cool look to them. But yeah, like I said, don't get to see this one very much. Almost always is in its burrow, and every once in a while I may see some feet on either entrance. So yeah, let's move on. Alright, you can just see the butt and back legs there of Turnip. Turnip is my Tapeninocynus biolysis, also known as the purple tree spider, I believe. So far, really fun tarantula to keep. I really do like the Tapeninocynus genus. They are really, really voracious eaters. They usually will be outside. This one's a little bit more skittish than like my T. gigas was, which I believe the T. gigas has had a name change. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, oh, looks like Turnip might pop back out. Feels like everything is okay now. Yeah, so not very purple. You do tend to notice like a purplish sheen in the right light. Well, okay, won't buy Turnip. But yeah, so far not much purple going on. But I do keep them in a arboreal setup. It's tall enclosure, not an extreme amount of sub, but a good amount because this one did burrow a little bit. Water dish, fake plant, whatever. However, you might notice, because the line here, I do have this one set up to be open from the top. Because them, just like the Samapoas, they tend to stay kind of towards the base of trees and things like that. So they don't web up here, so I can put a top opening enclosure without having to worry about destroying any kind of web. So it's nice. But yeah, that is Turnip, and we'll move on. Okay, this is my Lafropoma nigerian, which I believe is also known as the Sangi Island Black. I don't have all the common names memorized, but this one I do have named Porum. When I first got this one, I actually had gotten two. I had them named Palum and Porum. One of them had a bad molt and did not make it through, but this one has. So yeah, pretty cool looking species so far. I'm sorry you can't see through the top there better, but I think they do get a little bit darker as they get bigger. It has a cool little tiger stripe pattern on the abdomen right now. This one is definitely skittish. Even as a sling would give me threat postures. So a little bit of attitude with this one. And definitely doesn't like to come out and be visible very often, so I am kind of happy to see that Porum did come out so that we could see him. Probably came out to drop some food in there earlier. I don't know if they ended up getting it. I'll have to double check a little bit later. But yeah, sorry I couldn't get a clear image of this one, but again, same kind of thing as the last one. Arboreal setup. It tends to go back behind the cork bark and kind of into the dirt a little bit, so I'd give this one a little bit more sub than say like a Avicularia species or something like that. But I keep the subs fairly dry, and then just keep the water dish filled. So let's move on. Alright, this crazy mess is the enclosure for my Poecilotheria subfusca Lowland named Rahu. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to get to see Rahu, which is very unfortunate because Rahu is getting very, very beautiful, but is very, very rarely ever out and visible. And also made kind of even harder because Rahu has pulled down the fake plant and webbed over it, and has made like a canopy, and usually is underneath that leaf, kind of tucked down in, and then yeah, just has put dirt and web over everything. So that's fun. Makes it really fun to try to get food down in there, and luckily left the corner open here for me to get to the water dish so far. We'll see. Hopefully that stays that way. But yeah, another molt, maybe two, and Rahu actually will be ready to come out of this enclosure, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, wish I could show you, but that's the way it goes in the tarantula hobby. But let's move on. Alright, this is my Tyrannopelma sasmi, which is named Mystique. As you can see, this one is in pretty, I would say, in pre-molt. Yeah, this one is a cool species. A little bit more on the fossorial side so far as a sling. So I've given it deep substrate, water dish that I overflow every once in a while. And I mean, this one's out fairly often, but it definitely does seem to like to dig and have a lot of substrate to mess around with. So it's also a constant battle to try to keep the water dish clear of substrate. So I'm assuming by this time tomorrow it'll probably be full of dirt again. But yeah, not much else I can really say about this one at the moment. It looks pretty dull color wise, but when they freshly molt they are gorgeous. But let's move on. Alright, up next, this is the Phormictopus auratus. I think is also known as the Haitian brown, if I remember correctly. But this one's name is Tom, after everybody's favorite man in the tarantula YouTube universe, Tom Moran. Tom was the one who recommended this species, really any Phormictopus species, to me. And so I definitely did get it because of his recommendation, and named it after him. So this one I've just given, well, the enclosure looks nothing like when I originally set it up, but Tom has dug it out and moved dirt everywhere. Another one that I constantly battle to keep the water dish clear of substrate. But other than that, very voracious eater, not super skittish, and you know, one that's always out and about, so that's always nice. It looks like Tom has dumped his mealworm that I gave him earlier in the water. That's fun. So looks like I will be changing out the water once again. Yeah, that is Tom Phormictopus auratus. Okay, this is the enclosure for my Psalmopoeus ecclesiasticus, named Smaug, and yeah, you're not going to see this one. This one is extremely skittish. You can kind of see its butt there, but the minute I touch this enclosure, it always runs back behind its cork bark into the web tube that it has made, which is unfortunate because it is a rather nice looking Psalmopoeus when you do get to see it. But yeah, normal Psalmopoeus setup, arboreal enclosure, a little bit more substrate just because they do like to burrow a bit. Dry sub, water dish. Yeah, hopefully I can get some, you know, some more footage of this one when it's out. I do have a couple pictures on my Instagram, I think of this species that I've been able to catch. So if you definitely want to see a little bit more of this one, I highly recommend checking out my Instagram. Okay. This is the enclosure for my Psalmopoeus pulcher, which is named Nori, which is actually a little bit of a nod to Norvis, who is another tarantula YouTuber. So yeah, let me see if I can actually get you guys a look without completely dumping the water dish. Kinda. There's a little bit of a look at Nori. Really pretty Psalmopoeus species. Webs a ton. Has webbed over everything. It's almost kind of made me eat my words about the top opening enclosures for Psalmopoeus species, because has webbed straight up from the substrate all over everything. But yeah, other than that, normal Psalmopoeus setup. This one is a little bit less skittish than the last one. He's usually out and about, didn't really burrow. Really good eater, but that's pretty common. Yeah, I really enjoy having this one around. Oh, looks like he's moving a bit. Oh, but stopped. So I was hoping it might come up to the top so we can get a better view. But this is also, I believe, another one that you should check out my Instagram, because every once in a while I can get, I can get quick pictures, which is a lot easier to get than video footage. Alright, this is the enclosure for my Seriocosmus rete, which is named S'more. As you can see, S'more is a dwarf species. I don't know if S'more is going to get much bigger than this at all. But yeah, cool species. Really pretty, cool color pattern. I mean, they're just kind of sweethearts. This one is always out and about. Also a little curious. This is one that when I take off the lid of the enclosure, which I'm surprised she's not doing right now, but a lot of times we'll decide that that means that it's time to come out of the enclosure and take a look around. And that being said, is one reason why I do have this particular tarantula in a little bit bigger enclosure than I normally would for its size, just because she seems to like to wander around. And you know, the only really downside about that for tarantulas is that it sometimes makes it harder for them to find prey items. So I tend to just drop prey items right next to her and she'll snag them, so I don't make her really hunt her prey items that much. But she does seem to like to take strolls around her enclosure, so I left her in something a little bit bigger, so she'll definitely be in this the rest of her life. But I think she likes having the extra space, or at least seems to. But yeah, that is S'more. She is adorable. Alright, here we have my Brachypelma emilia. This one's name is Ancho. As you can see, Ancho is fat and happy and in pre-molt. Yeah, I love this tarantula. I think she is gorgeous. She is very, very, very chill. I'm not going to leave the enclosure lid off too long here, but you know, typical Brachypelma setup. Dry sub, water dish, a little something to climb on. It's actually a hollowed out piece of cork bark. She can go in there and does sometimes. But yeah, she is a good eater. She is very chill. Also usually is inquisitive. One of the few tarantulas in my collection that I have handled, because she did decide to just walk out of her enclosure one day when I had the lid off, and I just let her. Yeah, as you guys know, I don't really usually handle my tarantulas, so that was definitely a rare occurrence, but she was just fine. Super sweet. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. She's my wife's favorite, which is saying something. Highly recommend the species if you get a chance to get one. Put this back on, and we'll move on. Hey guys, that's going to be it for part 1. My camera ran out of battery, so I'm going to have to film the next part probably tomorrow, and get part 2 out for you guys in the next day or so. But I did want to jump in here and really quickly show you guys the document that I use to track all the information that I keep about my tarantulas and help me keep track of all those names. So yeah, let's hop in and we'll take a look here. So this is my tarantula spreadsheet. As you can see, I keep track of the name, the species, the common name, the sex if I know it or have an idea of it, current size, which that information is not completely up to date, last feeding and last molt are probably the 2 most important things to keep track of, so that you have a good idea, you know, especially when you get to having as many tarantulas as I do. I think I'm pushing like 57 now. You know, it's kind of hard to keep track of all this stuff in your head. But I also have like a little guide here to help myself know if I need to overfill water for a certain species, if they like it a little bit more wet. I also have a marker to indicate whether a species is in pre-molt, which is just, you know, something else that's nice to keep track of. And then just kind of when I purchased the tarantula, so I have an idea of how old it is. On this document I also have just a wish list, so that's part of it. But if you guys go into the information in the down below the video, I'm going to be sharing out a blank version of this, just in case anybody wants to use it. It also has a blank wish list, but just in case anybody else wants to use it, you can open this link up and then you can save it to your own Google Drive and use it if you so like. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching part 1. I will get part 2 up as soon as I can. But if you like this, like, subscribe, do all those things. Also, like I mentioned in the video, check out my Instagram down below. I also have a Facebook page. I just post things on there every once in a while. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.